All right, if you bet on sports, you've probably heard the term sharp versus square or pros versus Joes. These are ways to describe or categorize two types of bettors: pro bettors versus public bettors, or winning bettors versus losing bettors. This Week 9 Thursday night game between the Texans and Jets is as close to the definition of pros versus Joes as we'll probably ever see. We have two teams with opposite records. Texans are 6-2. Jets are 2-6. Jets have lost 5 straight games, including their most recent loss last week to the Patriots, who many have rated easily inside the bottom 5 teams in the league. Obvious question here is, why are the Jets favored in this game? And not just favorites, but they're getting respect on the betting line, going from -1 to -2. The first thing we need to understand here is that win-loss records mean absolutely nothing when it comes to the betting spread. Now, wins and losses might be the only thing that really matters at the end of the day for the teams, but it's not a good measurement of a team's ability. There's a lot of randomness that can happen during a game, and oftentimes the teams that benefit from that randomness are the teams that win, but doesn't always make them the better team. Also, just because a team is the quote sharp side, doesn't mean that side's going to win. A lot of times it just means that perception of a team is different than what the analytics show. On the surface, it's easy to look at a 6-2 Texans team and assume they are better than the 2-6 Jets team, but there are much better ways to estimate a team's true strength. How pro bettors and how the smart people working at the sports books do it is by creating power ratings. I've done a bunch of lessons on this topic, and I'll link a video in the top right-hand corner now that explains what power ratings are and how to create your own power ratings. And, people always confuse power ratings with power rankings. They're completely different. Power rankings is just an opinion someone has and ranks teams top 25, top 10, 5, whatever. But how much better is the number 1 ranked team than the number 2 ranked team? Power ratings gives each team a value based on their performance. It's basically like letting the numbers tell the story. To power rate a team would be combining metrics to come up with a value for a team. It tells you exactly how much better or worse that team is to any other team. Now, on the screen is my own personal power ratings from 3 weeks ago, back in week 6. Now, there's no rules on how to come up with the value for each team, but because there's thousands of stats, advanced metrics, and analytics that can be used to measure a team's ability, you can use a variety of them in combination and come up with a pretty accurate rating for each team. There's no secret stats that the sports books know about and use to come up with their ratings that the betting public doesn't know about. So for the most part, if you're creating your own power ratings, they're going to be fairly close to someone else's because everyone's basically using the same advanced metrics, or the ones that everyone thinks are the most meaningful. So back in week 6, I had the Jets with a power rating of 1.3 points. That means they were 1.3 points better than a league average team. I had the Texans minus 0.8 points below a league average team. Now, keep in mind, these numbers are based on a combination of several advanced metrics that I think are important when measuring a team. So, anyone else creating power ratings would have had somewhat similar numbers at this time back in week 6. Not saying exactly the same numbers because everyone uses a different combination and weighs certain metrics differently, but I'm showing this to give an idea of where these two teams were 3 weeks ago, and based on my power ratings, the Jets were 2 points better than Houston if they played on a neutral field and were fully healthy. Now, fast forward to present day, week 9. My current ratings for each team have changed. Again, anyone who creates their own ratings probably has very similar ratings as to what you see here on the screen. The big difference between each person's power ratings come after you have your raw power ratings and how you adjust that number for certain variables, because the analytics can only tell you so much. You have to adjust for things like player injuries. The analytics you use to create the ratings don't know if a team is going to be playing their next game without several starters. Plus there's no guide or sheet that shows the value for each player and what he's worth to the point spread, so you'll have to quantify a player's value in order to adjust your power ratings to account for injured players. Another adjustment would be based on travel, scheduling, or home field advantage. So my raw power ratings, which are based on a combination of 8 different weighted advanced metrics, they tell me the Texans are almost 2 points better than league average. They tell me the Jets are 0.7 points worse than league average. So when you combine these two numbers, it converts into Houston minus 2.6 point favorites versus the Jets, but that number still has to be adjusted for a few things. Let's start with home field advantage. The game's being played in MetLife Stadium. The standard home field on average is around 1 to 1.5 points. I'm giving the Jets a little bit of a bump of home field advantage here because I normally do it for home teams on a short week. If you've watched any of these videos, especially the Thursday Night Football ones, short weeks, less time to prepare, have more of a negative impact on the road team because the preparation time is even less for them as they lose a day to travel. Also, in this game, we have a road team, Houston, who is an indoor dome team playing outdoors. So, with that, I'm awarding the Jets 2 points for home field advantage, which would now make Houston a favorite of basically minus a half point, or minus 0.6 points to be exact. And we're not done yet either. The Texans are the more banged up team, or I should say, have more impactful players injured that are expected to miss this game. Of course, the obvious ones are both their number 1 and number 2 wideouts. They're going to miss Nico Collins and Steph Diggs. But Texans also have some linebackers that are banged up. Their offensive line is nowhere near full strength. But at this point in the season, every team has injuries. The Jets secondary is going to be without both their safeties. It also looks like one of Aaron Rodgers' pals, wide receiver Alan Lazard, is going to miss. Jets did get Hassan Reddick back, which is a boost to their defense last week. He's going to be working his way back into form. I'm not going to go through each injury and what that player is worth, but I'm comfortable subtracting 1 full point from the Texans for their injuries because remember, the numbers I use to create these power ratings are based on this season's games, which both Diggs and Collins played in most of them. So after adjusting for injuries, I'm basically now at Jets favored by a half point. My point in all this is to show that the Jets being favored in this game isn't really that crazy, especially when you remove any perceptions or surface numbers like win-loss record and just look at the advanced analytics or the numbers that matter. Like, for example, on the screen is EPA rankings. EPA stands for expected points added. It's a very popular advanced metric that a lot of bettors use to determine a team's strength because it's able to capture a lot of important qualities about a team and boil it down to just a single number. Now, based on the current EPA numbers, if we look at the middle column, net EPA, this is combining both offense and defense. The Jets are actually ranked right next to Houston. So if you're someone that weighs EPA metric heavily, you'd have the Jets and Texans evenly matched. And then when you start to factor in home field advantage, you'd probably have the Jets favored by 1.5 or 2 points, which is where the odds makers currently have the line. Technically based on my numbers, where I make the Jets favored by a half point, that does mean I show value betting on the Texans at +2. It's a 1.5 point difference between my numbers and what the odds makers show, which any difference of 1 point or more is decent value, but I just don't like this situational spot for Houston. They're coming off a big divisional win where they take a 2-game lead in their division. They have a big primetime Sunday night game on deck versus one of the premier teams in the league, the Lions. This kind of seems like a potential letdown, look-ahead spot for Houston. Definitely not backing the Jets here. The fact it's a sharp side means absolutely nothing to me. Their special teams is awful. Their kicker, Greg Zuerlein, has now cost them at least 3 games, this season alone. I need a little bit more to confirm a bet. If my numbers and matchup breakdown don't agree, I'm just simply not betting the game. I don't bet for entertainment or just to have action. I did that for way too long in my 20s. I don't care if it's a TV game. The only way I'm making a bet is if I feel like I have an edge, and that means everything lines up, including my numbers. I want to check off all 3 boxes of my game selection process. If you want to learn how to create your own betting process, I'll help you do that. You can join the Discord. Um, just got a couple source plays coming in. Sorry about that. Yeah, join the Discord community. You can join for free and just DM me. I'll help you. I'll help explain to you, how you can become a more well-informed bettor. The invite link to join the Discord is in the description below this video, or in the social, or in my bios and my social. Sorry, I'm distracted. I have a bunch of plays coming in right now. Yeah, let me get out of here. Hope you found this video informative. Until next time, good luck with your bets.